Frustrated SAA pilots are heading to the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration. They wanted to compel the airline to pay 13th cheque it's due to its members. The union also wants SAA to pay its members 8 months of unpaid salaries. SAA has been unable to pay salaries since March last year. So let's discuss this with Grant Back, chairperson of the SAA Pilots Association. I wish I could speak to you when there's a day of happy news, Grant, but you've been locked out since the 18th of December. You haven't been paid for 10 months and now no more death and disability cover. What on earth is going on?
Well, good morning, Jane. Thanks for having me on the show. You're 100% right. We've been locked out since the 18th of December. We haven't received salaries since March. And as of January, the company informed us that they would no longer be paying the death and disability cover that would need to be paid to the various pension funds that the pilots are on. And without those payments, the pilots have no death and disability cover. Tragically, in the last 6 weeks, we've lost 4 pilots, 2 to COVID. This is an extreme situation, and we've really gone on bended knee to the BRPs and asked for them to please come to the party, make these payments, deduct them from the pilots' money that's owed to them, which would more than cover these premiums. But unfortunately, to date, I have nothing to report back to you. Cover is running out. Pilots have no cover. God forbid anything was to happen to any of them, and what would be left to their families is a big concern for us.
No, I can imagine. And I'm just wondering why you are still being locked out. Last time I spoke to you, you had agreed to many of the demands. So what's going on there?
So status quo remains. We've pretty much agreed to everything that they've asked for. The 2 areas of concern really are the back pay that's owing, and we've moved again considerably in that regard. The latest offer that we've made to the company, I think, is extremely reasonable, understanding the conditions that are in the country and also the conditions within the company itself. But the money is there. The business rescue practitioners have the money from the Department of Public Enterprises. They had committed to pay the 13th cheque, which was owed in 2019, which had been paid to the rest of the company and forms part of our salaries. They have paid that money to other pilots that are not locked out, that do not belong to SAPA. And currently, SAPA still represents 82% of all the pilots within the airline. And a vast majority of the people that left SAPA recently was to do so because they had been told that if they were to resign from SAPA, they would then be paid the back pay in the 13th cheque, which has not happened. They're still locked out. So it's a dire situation for us all. It really is a war of attrition. And as far as we're concerned, the BRPs have the money that made the commitment. The business rescue plan talks to them, paying that money through to us, and yet we're still waiting. And this has really just come down to a power play and a war of attrition.
All right, talk me through what's happening about this SAA plane that's flying to Brussels to collect vaccines. I believe it's going to be empty. I mean, what we've seen before is that other planes have brought these vaccines in. So what's happening there? I should imagine that won't be a cheap flight.
No, Jane, that's a good question. The flight was supposed to leave, I think it was last week. It didn't due to compliance issues on the training in particular. There were certain exemptions that had to be requested, which were approved by the CAA for the one flight or the one flight only. That flight is scheduled to leave, I think at about 9 o'clock this evening, to go to Brussels, as you said, empty. That's a 340-600. That costs 200,000 Rand to fly per hour. It's about a 10.5-hour flight to Brussels. Cost of all the overflight clearances, the cost of the landing fees, the cost of flying back, 1 pallet, I understand, of vaccines. That's 80,000 vaccines. In my mathematics, that puts us close to 5 million Rand to fly 80,000 vaccines back to South Africa.
And there's a cheaper option.
There's definitely a cheaper option. They've done it before. They used TUI to fly the vaccines to South Africa. You could get a lot more vaccines to South Africa in the belly space of the commercial aircraft that's flying here with passengers and returning to Europe with passengers than flying an empty 340-600 with 4 engines all the way to Europe and all the way back. And the only thing I can think of is, is this some type of photo opportunity or publicity stunt? If it was the only way in which the vaccines could be returned to South Africa, we would be over 110% behind the initiative. But to fly an empty aeroplane there for 80,000 vaccines and all the way back to South Africa, I really question whether the correct PFMA regulations have been followed and certainly hope that this is be reconsidered.
Imagine how many salaries could be paid with that grant back. Thank you for talking to us.